Since their inception, contact sports have been well linked to numerous injuries. Common, however, head injuries are viewed as something that could simply be walked off or something that required a strong will to carry on playing. Now, as waves of former athletes are dying of mental illnesses well before their time, numerous organisations are coming under fire for their lack of athlete protection. After years of research, a Nigerian doctor by the name of Dr. Bennet Omalu discovered and published findings of a neurodegenerative disease caused by repeated head injuries. The disease was later called CTE, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Dr. Omalu discovered that CTE develops after repeated blows to the head, causing the brain to shrink and degenerate. Before Omalu's research, this kind of mental illness was cast aside as being punch-drunk or simply heavily concussed, but nothing else was thought of it. Now, after years of research, it is believed that 99% of former NFL players suffer from some form of CTE, leading many to worry about current athletes. The NFL, or the National Football League, was at its peak in popularity during the 1980s, and one of its most popular franchises during this time was the San Francisco 49ers. This success was in part due to wide receiver Dwight Clark. Famous for making a game-winning catch versus the Cowboys in 1981, Clark had a relatively short 8-year professional career. Clark was never known for being a big hitter, or even a very aggressive player. However, having played football all through high school and college, Clark was putting himself at extremely high risk of CTE. Despite this, he stated that he only suffered 3 concussions in his entire career. However, in June of 2018, Clark passed away from ALS, a disease he'd been fighting for many years. Clark himself believed that his playing career led to his mental illness. Regardless of this, the NFL has never acknowledged the injuries Clark sustained even before his professional career. In recent years, wide receiver Antonio Brown, who plays the same position as Dwight Clark, has tarnished his previously shining reputation. A string of arguments with teammates, coaching staff, and several allegations have led many to believe that Brown is suffering from early signs of CTE, stemming most obviously from a graphic helmet-to-helmet hit he took in 2016.
Roethlisberger from the pocket, middle of the field, incomplete. Personal foul, a flag does come in. Went to the head. Lewis Harris is going to be flagged for this on the hit on Antonio Brown, and it's going to put the Steelers in field goal range. Burfict was in there too.
Burfict is coming across the field. I saw it. I thought it was him.
Yeah, I know that they both were in on the coverages at 55 or 37.
Personal foul, defense number 55. 15-yard penalty. Automatic first down.
Burfict in the end.
Definitely took the shot to the head.
After this hit, Brown stated it only took him 2 weeks to recover fully, and he went on to play 18 games the next season. Like Clark, Brown has never been known as a hard or physical player, but even one severe concussion can take extensive time to heal, in some cases even a year or longer. Brown was 28 at the time and has continued to play, meaning that the possibility exists that his brain is still severely damaged and possibly even still healing. Most recently, Brown has been on 3 different teams in the last year, after arguments with teammates as well as a dispute with the league about the use of an old helmet. Brown is currently unsigned, but many teams are interested in bringing Brown back into the league. One of the early signs of CTE is the inability to make good decisions. Many believe that the Brown's irrational behaviour is a sign of this, and many believe he shouldn't continue playing at all. Brown's current situation raises many red flags. However, in his current state, the damage caused has been mostly personal, with Brown arguing with seemingly everyone and making irrational decisions. In recent history, however, the worst possible outcome has occurred. In 2012, Javon Belcher, a mid-level NFL player for the Kansas City Chiefs, murdered his 22-year-old girlfriend before driving to the team's practice facility. Upon arriving, he committed suicide in front of the team's general manager and several staff members. Like the previous mentions, Belcher was never known as a tough or physical player, though through hard work and grit, he made his way into the NFL where he'd work as hard as he could every day, constantly fearing that one poor performance would result in him being cut. This work ethic potentially led to numerous and unchecked head injuries that accumulated over time. Belcher's family attempted to sue the team over negligence, believing they did not take steps to ensure Belcher's health. In 2014, ESPN released a report determining that Belcher suffered from CTE. However, throughout his career there was not one definitive moment where Belcher suffered concussion, leading some to speculate. Welsh international rugby player George North began playing for Wales at age 18. Standing at 6'4" and weighing almost 18 stone, North is something of a physical specimen, using his immense frame to bulldoze many opposing wings. This bruising style play took its toll when North was knocked out twice in the same game, after which he was not subbed out.
Painful day for the left wing. Doesn't get any better.
After being left unconscious in 3 further games, most recently against France in the 2026 Nations, many have questions if North should continue playing. North's career has only lasted 10 years, and for most players he would be in his prime, seeing as he's currently 28 years old. But over the last 2 or 3 years he has appeared slow and sluggish, and is very clearly not the same lethal attacking threat he once was, adding more to the belief that his brutal career is having an effect on his decision making. North has said he intends to retire once he reaches 100 international caps, and seeing as Wales is currently entering a rebuilding phase, the stage seems set for North to retire before he endures more serious injuries. Despite obviously not being able to take the punishment many players can, North still continues to play however, and the International Rugby Union and the Welsh Rugby Union appear to do nothing to help his case. One player who took a decision to retire early was Patriots tight end Rob Gronkowski, who retired at 29 after winning 3 championships and earning $45 million in his playing career. In 2017, Gronkowski stated that he must have suffered around 20 concussions in his career, with at least 5 of those being blackout, meaning he has no memory of the events after the injury. Gronkowski shows no severe signs of CTE, but his openness about retiring early and his concussions say a lot about the lack of protection for both his team and the NFL, as Gronkowski was an essential member of a highly successful Patriots team. Drafted in the same year, by the same team and at the same position as Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez had a very short career, only playing for 2 years in the NFL before he was arrested for the murder of a semi-professional player who was dating the sister of Hernandez's fiancée. Following this, the Patriots released Hernandez, and 5 years later he was found dead in his cell, following suicide by hanging. A post-mortem autopsy showed Hernandez suffered from severe CTE. Some quotes state the most severe CTE ever seen in an athlete. Hernandez was known as a troublemaker, and many believe his friends in New England were a bad influence that drove him to act erratically. Hernandez was known as an extremely hard worker who never gave in. Like many others, the inability to monitor his condition eventually led to his mental illness. However, Hernandez now represents possibly the most notorious case of CTE in an athlete. Without doubt, however, the most severe case of brain damage not diagnosed as CTE is former WWE wrestler Chris Benoit. Head injuries are rare in professional wrestling due to the showmanship of the sport. For Benoit, however, this was not the case, as his finishing move was commonly a headbutt from the top rope. Benoit began to use this move at the very beginning of his professional career in 1985, and continued to use it for the next 22 years of his career. The 22 years of punishment eventually led Benoit to murder his wife on the 22nd of July 2007, before murdering his son a day later. The post-mortem autopsy found no defensive wounds, meaning in both cases an argument was not what resulted in the murders. According to his many friends, Benoit had become deeply depressed and had begun to distance himself from the others. The day he killed his son, Benoit made a call to a friend and claimed that his wife and son were being sick from food poisoning, so he was unable to make a flight to a wrestling event. On June 25th, Benoit hung himself using a cable tied to a weight machine. Many theories have been proposed as the reasoning behind Benoit's turn, including drug, steroid and alcohol abuse, along with his failed marriage. However, most damning is the extensive damage his brain took over his career, resulting in CTE, which contributed to his depression as well as the mental collapse that resulted in his murder-suicide. CTE, however, does not always lead to former athletes committing atrocities, as one of the most tragic cases appears in former all-time great Muhammad Ali. Ali was known for his strong wit, ability to avoid punches and his sharp tongue. Ali was never known for being knocked out in dramatic fashion. However, Ali had somewhere between 61 to 144 career fights in both amateur and professional. During this career, Ali only lost 13 of these fights, 5 coming in his professional career, with only 1 loss officially coming via knockout. However, Ali's cavalier style and robust ego would conclude that he'd never back down unless he was physically incapable. Ali's final fight came in 1981 and his health rapidly began to decline. Even before his last fight, Ali showed severe signs of brain damage, as the once rapid trash talker was now known to heavily slur and stammer his words.
The world heavyweight champion should be pretty like me. I'm as pretty as you and you're not a fighter.
Oh, you got me beat. There's no problem there.
The round is round 8. If that's what you're talking about, I have predicted round 8 to prove that I'm great.
All right.
If he makes me sore, I'll get him like more.
Oh, that's pretty wild.
It's good to see you looking really great.
I'm glad to be here.
You are.
I'm getting old now.
You feel old.
Yeah, I feel like I'm about 73 your age.
Do you?
No, I feel pretty good.
You do. I tell you why I said.
The interviews with brain damage Ali are hard to watch, as it's clear he is no longer the man he once was. Ali was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and at the time many believed it was simply genetic. But with more research, it's now commonly accepted that Ali contracted Parkinson's as a result of CTE, as nearly 150 fights and countless sparring sessions clearly took their toll on the legendary fighter. Ali is one of the most influential athletes in history, and for many his forward mental illness was tragic and heartbreaking. In the 1994 Olympics, Ali appeared before millions as he lit the Olympic torch to start the Games. Ali's highly visible shaking and lack of mobility bears no resemblance to the legendary footwork of his younger years. Sadly, Ali passed away from Parkinson's on the 3rd of July 2016 at the age of 74. Dr. Bennet Omalu, the man who discovered CTE, now advises that no one should play contact sport, and that if they do, it should only be after the age of 18. Omalu states that contact sports are simply not worth the risk. As a result of this, sports like basketball, which has limited contact as a whole and almost no contact at the head, are advised over contact sports, especially for younger kids. The shocking amount of athletes who show signs of CTE or have a history of head injuries in organisations such as the NFL, the UFC, the NHL, and boxing organisations around the world who continue to play is telling of the poor attempts to educate people of the possibility of such injuries, and how even small hits can lead to other neurodegenerative diseases. Simply put, the human brain was not designed to sustain years of being bounced around inside the small box we call the skull, and contact sports as a whole are dangerous and, simply put, reckless in regards to athletes' health. However, the long history of such sports and the pedigree means that there is simply too much money at stake for organisations to begin to provide proper healthcare for athletes, or for them to advise that younger generations shouldn't partake at all. At some point, people have to decide if the potential risk of serious neurodegenerative diseases such as CTE are worth all that can be achieved in a professional career.